Hey, it's Dan Morales. This is Homebuyer Radio, and this week we have a guest. Our guest is
Rachel Gallegos with EXP Realty.
Thank you for joining me. All right, so Rachel and I have this thing we do, right? So we've done a number of videos. We've done all kinds of content. We never plan anything out, okay? So, like, this is always unrehearsed, unscripted. It's just you and I sitting down and having a conversation.
Absolutely.
And talking real estate, right? Because we both are passionate about real estate,
Yeah,
right?
and sometimes we even get stuck on the phone with each other for like 45 minutes, call about a deal, and we end up on the phone for 45 minutes to talk about real estate.
Yeah. That's, you get their like real live and uncensored stuff. And so, like, totally I think the other day we were trading messages. I'm like, hey, what are you doing? You should come in and let's do a couple of podcasts. And that's what we're doing. We're doing a couple of podcasts.
Yeah.
Talking about all things real estate. And of course, the real estate market has been interesting, right?
Yeah.
You go from like this past, probably summer that was like insane. Like,
yeah, I mean, really, it was like 2 solid years of just bananas.
Yeah.
Bananas.
Yeah. And I think part of it is like there's the challenge that people have now of like adjusting to the fact that this isn't like a bad market. It's just more of like what's traditionally more of like a normal market, right? Like what we've normally seen where things are like balanced and the buyer actually has the opportunity to maybe have a little more leverage than what they did in the past, right?
Yeah. And I think that also with it kind of shifting from such a insane market to a more balanced market, for it to happen in that third and fourth quarter of the year, it almost just made the blow feel a little bit bigger than it actually is, right?
Totally.
I mean, we're in the fourth quarter. It's the end of the year. This is always the slow time of year for holidays. Nobody wants to put their home on the market when it's Christmas. Yeah. So I think the two of those combined, it just makes everybody think like, oh, the market's crashing.
No, I totally agree with you because, and I always remind our lending staff that when you get from like, really kind of just before Thanksgiving, almost through the end of the year, it is always a really dead time for us. And then like come January 1, like the phone blows up. Yeah. Oh, we want to buy a house. We want to get pre-approved. And like we get crazy busy January, February, doing all these pre-approvals. And then people start buying in the spring. Yeah. And, and so like, because I've, this is what I think my 31st year, I'm way too old. My 31st year doing this. But like, I've seen this like multiple times. And so, like, I always tell the staff, like, just enjoy the little bit of a lull. Prepare for the upcoming year and good stuff like that. But, it's such a great point because, people think, like, oh, hey, we went from this insane market over the course of the last couple of years, but it all pulled back at really what is probably a time that's always slow.
Yeah, for sure. Always slow.
Nobody wants to do this in the middle of, I don't want to like move right before Christmas.
Yeah.
I mean, so, it's one of those times where, people are just, they want to enjoy families and the holidays but it can make it feel worse than what it is. Yeah. Because it almost feels like, oh my gosh, the pendulum has swung the other way. And I know you see some of the same stuff I do on socials. So, you see all these, like, I'd call them, like, viral posts.
Doom and gloom.
Yeah. Or, like, hey, instead of paying $50,000 over, now you can get $50,000 off. And it's like, no, the only house you're getting $50,000 off was the one that was overpriced by $50,000 to begin with, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe talk a little bit about that. Like, because I think it gives people this false impression that they're going to be able to go in and negotiate this insane deal on a house that's properly priced when I don't really think that's going to happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with, like you said, how the house is priced when it hits the market, right? Yeah. And a big part of that is the agent's responsibility because the seller's not going to understand the market we're in. Yep. So, for example, like I just did a listing appointment this week and, they're past clients of mine and they trust me. And so I'm pulling comps for them. Well, for me to pull comps, for me to find something that's similar, I'm only going to be able to go back. I can't go back 6 weeks or 8 weeks. I have to go back maybe 6 months, which, within a year is reasonable. But because we're seeing such a difference, so a house that's similar to theirs that maybe sold for $330 6 months ago, I'm going to advise them and say, hey, you should be listing at probably $315, $320. Yeah. So it's not that I guess you could look at it as lost value. I mean, I don't know if I would look at it that, but that house that sold for $330 was priced at $300 and it sold for $30,000 over.
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
So if you price at $315, $320, you're still, maybe you were worth $330 a year ago if somebody would have paid for that. We don't know.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
But if you lost $10,000 in value over the course of 6 months, but you've owned the house for 4 years and you gained 20% in equity, the 8 months before that 6 months, you're still up 15%.
Yes.
We're not looking at a downturn.
Yes.
We looked at a stabilization where prices are not going significantly over unless people, agents and sellers are pricing it unrealistic on 6 months ago. We're not 6 months ago. So
well, it always comes down to like price, right? Like I was just talking to a client. I said, look, there's nothing wrong with a house that price can't fix.
Yep.
And every real estate deal can be done. It's just a matter of what price, right?
Yeah.
And in the hard part for an agent now is, okay, what's the right price for that property?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think a lot of agents would be like, okay, it sold for $330, and the client's thinking, well, if it sold for $330, then maybe it should be worth $400, right? Or something in saying that. You of course, are a good agent that sets the right expectations and be like, okay, cool. You'd walk them through what you and I just talked about and say, okay, here's why I'm making the recommendation I am for these reasons, so that they can put the house on the market and price it in a way that it'll actually sell, as opposed to starting too high and then you start doing a price reduction, and then people start to think like, oh, okay, that's where I think that mindset comes in of, oh, the sky's falling, we're facing this housing bubble and stuff like that. And it's like, no,
we're definitely not. We're still in a housing shortage 100%, especially this area.
Yeah.
I mean, the jobs in this area are so abundant and it's only continuing to grow, which means we need housing. So, I mean, unless we start seeing builders really just, packing out a ton of houses, which they are, there's a lot of new construction out there, but, it's...
I still think it's, like you said, it really comes down to it's still a function of supply and demand.
Mm-hmm.
You still have a ton of demand, and there is demand out there. Contrary to what people think, there's demand out there.
Yeah.
And, there's still the supply side of it. Like, okay, if a house is priced right, it sells fast. If you're unrealistic about what you want for something, sure, it's going to sit there.
Yeah.
And you could potentially have to sell it at a bigger discount than what you would have if you would have priced it right from the get-go.
Well, and I think also having the understanding that selling a house in a week is not normal. You know what I mean? And I think people think like, oh, I'm going to put my house on the market and it's going to sell in a week. It might not, especially in some of those higher price points. You get above that $450 price point, you might be looking at a month, maybe 2 months. I mean, and that's normal. Yeah. That's not anything to be like weirded about.
It's not like that's bad, right?
No.
Like if you look at like a historical market, you'd figure most properties would sell within 3 to 6 months.
Yep.
Like, 3 to 6 months, not 3 to 6 days, not 3 to 6 hours. And I think, our industry did this really good job of talking about like, oh my gosh, I put this house in the market and it sold in 30 seconds and, it sold for 10,000 more. And it almost painted this picture like that is what's normal and consistent and what happens all the time. And it's like, no, that's highly abnormal.
Yes, that is not a normal market, and we are not in that market anymore.
No.
And that's okay. That's good.
I think it's great for buyers.
Absolutely.
For buyers, like, now is your chance to actually have an opportunity to be able to get into the market.
Right.
Still get really what is really very fair mortgage money.
Yeah.
Get into the market, or, your alternative is you keep paying your landlord's rent. I was just talking to a client, about property taxes. I just don't like paying that much in property taxes. I said, you're paying them now.
Yeah.
You're paying your landlord's.
Yeah.
You're paying your landlord's property taxes as part of your rent.
Yeah.
I don't like paying that much in rent. Well, which do you like the least?
Yeah, yeah.
It sounds like you don't like paying for anything.
You don't get to have your cake and eat it too. It's one or the other. Yeah.
Yeah, you can pay it for your landlord. You can pay it for yourself. But it's that kind of stuff where I think like there's this mindset of like, oh, the market's shifted. The pendulum is swung like way to the other end, and the world's going to end. It's like, no, that's not the case at all.
Yeah.
Especially when you talk to good people that know what they're doing.
Well, and that also goes back to like, buyers agents being educated on what is happening in the market. Because if I'm going to take a buyer to a home that's been on the market for 3 weeks and it's a $400,000 house, and it's, they've never done any price reductions or, and my buyer says, I want to go in $50,000 below, I'm going to tell them, I highly advise against that.
Yeah.
Like they're at 3 weeks or what, they haven't been sitting here for 6 months. Like this is a normal market.
Yeah.
And a seller is not going to be motivated to even want to negotiate with you if you're not going to be realistic with an offer.
No. But that's the kind of stuff that you do though, right? Like and that's one of the reasons I've always loved working with you, because you always set the right expectation. You shoot straight with your clients. You don't pay them lip service. Like,
right.
You tell them what they need to know and what they need to hear. And, I would say, as a lender who deals with a lot of different agents, you're one of the few agents that will do that.
Yeah.
And but your clients are well represented because you're giving them honest advice.
Absolutely.
And you're shooting straight.
And we've worked on deals where it's back. Some people don't like it.
No.
Well, sorry. I'm not gonna blow smoke up your butt to make it feel good. And
because even if you don't like it, it's not going to change it.
Absolutely.
Right? I don't like that the taxes are this. That's cool.
Yeah.
That doesn't change anything.
Yeah.
Well,
and it's not only that, but I think that, sometimes the motivation is, let's put it together. Let's get it together. And, if you're not advising your clients well, and your goal is just getting the deal put together instead of this is reality, let's try and get it for the best price, but let's not slap the seller in the face.
No, you do things the right way, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's like arranging a marriage, right? Like I'm trying to make a deal work for the seller, trying to make it work for the buyer, trying to make that right combination where everybody can say, okay, cool, this is worth doing for us as a seller, it's worth doing for us as a buyer. We feel good about everything, and you can get a transaction that's doable because you've managed the expectations the right way. You shot straight. Everybody knows what to expect. Yeah. But I can tell you, sometimes you just don't see that.
I know.
You see people trying to jam the square peg into the round hole.
Yep.
Or trying to make the client feel like something's going to be a certain way. And then there's always the mortgage guy like me. It's like, well, that's cool, but here's kind of what you should expect. And here's why, because I don't want you to be surprised. I don't want you to feel like, oh, hey, my expectations were set for this, and it ends up being something really different, right? Yeah. Because, it's the end of the day, it's like, look, the client's got to make the payment. They got to feel comfortable with it. You want to set them up to succeed, not fail. And, sure, do we want to make a transaction? Of course we do. Yeah. But not to the point where it's going to do something that's harmful or hurtful to the client. Yeah. Well,
and I think that it's easy for us in this industry. For us, it's a job, right? Yeah. And it's not our money. Yeah. So it is easy to, spend, quote unquote, other people's money. You're not buying the house for yourself, but you know what I mean? Like, it's so important in this industry to keep in mind, like, this is their life. This is not just like buying a car that they're going to trade in 3 years. Like, it's their home.
Totally. That you know what? We'll do that for next week. Yeah. Because that's like a perfect episode, because that's something that's always been near and dear to my heart. How do people get a hold of you?
They can either call me. My number is 616-566-2401, or they can email me at rachelgallegosrealtor@gmail.com, and my last name is spelled Gallegos.
You can't tell that she's ever said that before. That's always how, I always tell people Morales is Moralez, because everybody wants to do it with an S, right? Yeah. So I do the same thing. Hey, I'm Dan Morales with Dart Bank. My MLS number is 709-729. Dart Bank, of course, is an equal housing lender. You can reach me at danmorales.com. That's DANMORALEZ.com, or at 616-931-4629. Have a great day. Thanks for listening.